everybody. Welcome to Your Money Map. I'm your host, Jean Chatzky. We are sponsored, as always, by the Alliance for Lifetime Income. Finding financial stability, finding happiness, particularly in retirement, it is about so much more than just dollars and cents. It's about your emotions. It's about your hopes, your dreams, your goals. It's about asking questions like, how do you feel about retirement? Are you worried about running out of money before you run out of time? Are you worried about finding purpose? We're going to dig into all of these things today, and we're going to do it with the help of my guest, Amanda Clayman. She is a licensed clinical social worker. She is also a financial therapist, and that means that she helps her clients understand how their thoughts and feelings and histories really impact the world of money that they are living with today. Amanda coaches people one-on-one. She builds financial wellness programs for various companies. She develops online courses, and you've seen her across major media, CNBC, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Forbes, just to name a few. Amanda, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Thanks, Jean. I'm delighted to be here.
Let's just start with financial therapy, because I think it's a concept that's probably not familiar to some people who are watching. What is it, and how does it work?
Financial therapy was really born out of the idea that money and mental health intersect in some very unique and dynamic ways, and that there needs to be a place for people to go where we can really embrace the idea of money holistically and not only look at the dollars and cents, but also think about the emotional and the relational and cognitive and especially behavioral aspects of our financial health, with the idea that these are really important components to our overall well-being.
I know you use cognitive behavioral therapy in your work. Can you just explain how that plays in?
Well, it's really interesting because when we're learning about money in our homes, most of us are not really, we're not analyzing the messages and the experiences that we pick up and that go into our own individual kind of money reality, our sense of how money works in the world. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, what we're doing is decoding the thoughts and beliefs that fuel our assumptions about money. And with these assumptions, sometimes we're behaving in ways that we don't scratch beneath the surface because they just feel right to us, and maybe we assume that that's how everybody does it. But when we bring attention to them, we might discover that some of our beliefs are really limiting, that some of our thought processes may lead us down roads that are self-destructive, and especially when it comes to our behavior with money, that we really need to be able to sort of bring all of those different pieces together so that we can set meaningful goals and then be able to align our behavior with those goals.
How did you get into this? I mean, as I said, it's a fairly new field. I think when you get the degree that you got, you can go so many different directions. Why money?
Well, I went into the mental health field specifically to work with people around the role of money in their lives. And that was because there was a time when I did not have a financial therapist to go to, and I got myself in quite a bit of financial trouble. Nothing terribly unusual. It was a lot of credit card debt in my 20s. But the idea of getting out of debt was, what it did was it brought up all of this shame for me. And what I realized is that I was carrying a lot of my parents' anxiety around money. And that was typical of the home that I grew up in. And the process of getting out of that debt was not so much about having the right financial plan, although that was a big part of it. It was really more about how to be with myself, how to understand my triggers, how to understand sort of what happened to me, where I felt like I couldn't ask for help. You know, money was trying to point me into a direction where I needed to heal and grow. And ultimately, that's sort of the aha moment that I had. And I thought, why isn't this a job?
Yeah.
And it was long enough ago. Now we have a field. There are training programs, graduate programs. We have a financial therapy association. But back in the day, it was a little bit like the Wild West. We were just there were a few of us putting it together because we saw a need.
It's so funny listening to you say that, because I think that I found myself to personal finance and to money for many of the same reasons. I was trying to figure out a way to solve the problems in my own life. Well, when we think about money today, particularly when we think about it in a psychological context, the word that emerges is stress. Money is incredibly stressful. We did a survey with the Alliance at Her Money and found that when it comes to women, 3 out of 5 women say that they worry about money at least several times a month. About 30% worry several times a week, and 14% worry every single day. Those numbers are so high. It makes me wonder, when you have clients who you sit down with, what are the top issues they're talking to you about today?
Well, the 2 big ones are really shame and avoidance. And we can have shame and avoidance around our cash flow, around our preparation for the future, and if we feel like we're failing our own expectations of ourselves or what others may expect us to do in those situations. But most of my clients really are coming because they have a pain point around money, and they don't feel like there's a pain point. They don't feel like they can take this pain point anywhere else in their life. That maybe they're trying to talk to an advisor, but they're embarrassed because they have so many strong feelings around this, and it just feels inappropriate to bring it into that relationship. Or with their therapist, they feel like talking about money isn't really appropriate there either. So with me, clients can kind of come, and I encourage them to bring the mess, and together we work out both the what and the how. You know, what is it that is really causing the stress in their life? What are the things that can be done to address that? How those efforts might fit into their lives. And then on the other hand, when it's really not about the money, it's just about what the money brings up, what the money represents. And we're there to bring some clarity so that people aren't so stuck in those feelings of shame and avoidance.
What are people ashamed of, and what are they avoiding?
Well, shame is, unfortunately, there's no getting away from shame. Shame actually does have a purpose, and that purpose is that it helps us make sense of those things that we do that we see as somehow maybe threatening to our sense of belonging, either in our family or originally, in our tribe. And since back in the day, really, belonging is something that if we don't have that, in many cases, it can be a matter of survival.
Yeah.
So shame is there in a sense to keep us safe. And the reason that it works when it does work is because it's very effective. When we're feeling that feeling, that's a very, very strong and powerful motivator for us to do something. So it really is, it's something that we're attuned to, but oftentimes if it's not something that we don't have the power to change in an instant, shame becomes turned back at the self. And then we just feel like instead of I'm doing a bad thing, we feel like I'm a bad person.
When you're feeling ashamed, is it ashamed of not earning enough, ashamed of not having enough, ashamed of not giving enough, ashamed of not knowing what to do with your money? Is it all of that?
Well, a good way to find out which of those or which a few of those it is to ask yourself, what is it that I should be doing? So should is the holder of shame, really, because that's identifying that gap between where we are and the place that we think that we ought to be. So if we're asking ourselves, I should be saving for retirement, I should be managing my cash flow better, that's really getting to the heart of the expectation that we have for ourselves.
Does should get to the stress? Are we stressed out because we feel like we should and we're not?
No, should is terrible. Should is really oftentimes where we're using our intellect to really attack that emotional part of ourselves. Our intellect is often telling us, you shouldn't even feel that. These feelings are the problem. And if you could just get these pesky feelings out of the way, or if you weren't so weak, if you were more disciplined, etc., that critique can be, I don't know about your inner voice. Mine
is pretty tough
Yeah,
sometimes.
mine can be rough too.
So where does the stress come from? And what can we as individuals handle on our own? And where do we actually need help from a therapist?
If we think of stress as a continuum, the first level of stress, we can think of it as green light stress, is really where we feel like here's a problem and I'm going to mobilize in order to meet it. Above that, when we get to yellow and red, yellow stress is kind of where we start to maybe have some physical symptoms of stress. So you might notice tightness in your muscles, headaches, digestive problems. And then red level stress is where it starts to affect our thinking. So that's where it's just those blaring sort of messages saying, I'm trapped, this is terrible, I'm terrible, etc. So I would say in green level stress, where you'd probably be best served by either setting some goals for yourself, or it's great to have a partner, friends, people that you can talk to, even some coaching or advice. When we're getting into yellow level and red level stress, that's where it becomes much harder to differentiate between what's a financial problem and then what's the emotional or belief-based problem that we're getting into.
How do you differentiate between those two things?
That's where I think it's helpful to have a plan, because sometimes I even have a worksheet like this where there are columns, and at the top of the columns it's saying, this is sort of if you're still trying to sort of chase your bills, you're not quite at that break even, and then when there's some extra money and we have to decide what to do with that. And then there are a list of tasks. So you find your financial position, and then you find your list of tasks, and at the bottom of everyone's column, it says stop. Because once we've done the tasks, then it's incumbent upon us, if we're still feeling stressed, now we know, okay, I've done the task part of it, now this is an emotional issue, and now I need to look for emotional solutions instead of financial solutions. I need to make sure that I'm feeling supported. I don't feel isolated with this. I'm taking care of my body. I'm doing things to invest in my own self-care so that I can stay functional. And being able to have a list, because our brain, remember, that intellect wants to jump in. It wants to say, I know the answer. The answer is do more, try more. And sometimes what we really need is just to feel the softness that comes from feeling that life can be scary and sometimes things are out of our control.
Yeah, it's a big distinction, this control and not control. I've sat down with a number of financial advisors who have said to me, well, I'm like a therapist, right? I see my clients, they come in, they tell me about their lives, they tell me about their situations. What I do is a lot like therapy, but listening to you, it seems like there is a substantial distinction.
There is a substantial distinction, although I don't disagree. I think that people bring very sort of classic therapy issues and feelings into their relationship with their financial advisor. But one thing that's different is the financial advisor is probably not doing nearly as much work on sort of the self of the therapist. To be a therapist, you really have to do your own work. You have to know what your own triggers are. You have to have a really strong sense of what you may be picking up from your clients. For example, a financial advisor has a wonderful tool that they can offer. And sometimes that tool is really, really helpful, but that tool is not necessarily going to solve the emotional issue. Money brings up so much of who we are and what we want, and these are not necessarily things that can be solved with a spreadsheet. We just want the spreadsheet to maybe be talking to some of those more softer skills.
I have done enough research to know that at least some people say these issues come from childhood. They are not about what you were taught. They are about what you experienced in your home of origin, and you can't unsee them. That until you really deal with them, understand what your money story, money script, money history, whatever you want to call it, is, it's really tough to get out of your own way.
Right.
Do you agree with that? And are there people for whom these origin stories kind of just fade into the background?
I think everyone would benefit from doing some exploratory money work that you're describing. I don't think that it's something that either it's bad and you need it or you're fine and you don't. I think that it helps people understand their process a lot better, because the problem is we don't know what we don't know. You know, if something feels right to you, even if it's not working, you just may not have the perspective to think, oh, this is coming because I experienced a really bad patch in my family where a parent lost their job, and now I feel like money is unsafe and I have to always have enough of it or something bad could happen. You know, that person may be doing things that from the outside seem like these are logical, good steps that anyone should take. But the emotional wear and tear around that is a person who is seeking to feel in control because they had such a strong out of control experience. They're not necessarily going to ever get to a place where they feel safe. That thing that they're chasing, they might get to their financial goal, but the feeling they think they'll have when they reach that goal is not necessarily something that they experience. And that's honestly where a lot of people do come to me.
Well, and what you're describing, I think, is what a lot of people experience, a lot of women in particular, but a lot of people specifically around retirement. Retirement can be an emotional roller coaster, in part because we're living so long. And are worried. And I could just put myself on the couch right here because I'm describing my own fears, right? We're going to live a really long time. You want to have enough money to make sure that you will be okay. How do you approach these issues of safety and security and retirement?
Wow, it's the big topic, right? Because it is the thing that we get one shot at it. I mean, we can go back and we can adjust and we can pick up work if we need to, but ultimately we're talking about being in a period of our lives where we're going to have less control in some ways to do things to take care of ourselves as we would when we were perhaps in the earning years. So people really do feel a tremendous amount of pressure, combined with the sense that it also feels so final. You know, even if we have the most wonderful setup in the world, even if we're looking at palm trees and golfing every day, if that's your plan, it can still be such a change in identity and who we are used to being in the world. So I would say that there's a big shift that gets really conflated with a huge financial event in our lives. And that's where it's really helpful to be able to break those things down and be able to look at them and have some clarity about sort of, again, what is part of this developmental journey that I'm on where I'm transitioning into a different life phase, and what does it mean to be at the end of my earning or career journey. It's big stuff.
It is big stuff. Let's take the last part of it first. What does it mean to no longer be earning? And how does that play into this need for ongoing safety and security? I mean, I got to tell you, that's a big fear for me, right? Stopping earning, all of a sudden it feels like life is not in your control as much because you're not bringing in a continuous stream of money. Mm-hmm. How does that fear manifest itself in your office, and how do you work people through it?
Well, it takes a lot of patience and listening, first of all, because oftentimes the first thing that people really want to convince me of is that the financial problem is the problem and that their non-compliance with getting in the program is the only thing that we need to worry about. So that's really an attachment to this idea of I need to control my problems. My sense of safety comes from being able to come in and change the situation to be the thing that I need in order to feel safe. And ultimately, when we are looking at a period where we're no longer earning and we don't have that identity and perhaps status in the world, there's no way for that not to feel like a loss. And it doesn't have to be a terrible traumatic loss, but it is a loss, and it's appropriate to give it the respect and the time and the attention that such a loss really deserves in order for us to go into that phase of our lives where we can feel like we can reflect on what it was like to be that person in that life, but also to be ready to move on to it and to have that not be the entirety of our story.
Are there tools that you use to enable people to do that, to be able to look back with joy, but also look forward with anticipation?
So we do make sure that all of those boxes are checked, that it is, if there is a need for a plan, then we get the plan. Or if the problem is that there was a plan and we're not on the plan, then to say, okay, then that's not your plan. We need a plan that is true to the way that you're living and the choices that you're making. So we want to have information. The first place that we start is really gathering information and working on that awareness piece. Awareness is critical. And once we have the awareness, to find some compassion and forgiveness for ourselves, to look at that gap. This is where those should questions, a lot of times should admonitions come up, to be able to, in that compassion and forgiveness, appreciate what they've been able to do and to connect with, if this isn't the future that you had planned, how do we prepare for the future ahead? And to not only make the story of that future the failure that it wasn't something else.
It's interesting because so much about that future is unknown, right? There's so many things that you can plan, and then there are the things that just happen because life happens. The research that we conducted, and the study was called The State of Women 2022, it found that women in particular, we tend to prioritize this stability, safety, and security when it comes to at least the financial component of the equation, and that 83% of women, when asked, would choose a portfolio with reliable retirement income over a portfolio with the potential for higher returns. So perhaps more of an annuity solution, a pension solution to complement Social Security that would cover their fixed expenses in addition to, a little growth on the side. But this need to go hard charging into a full growth portfolio didn't seem to be as necessary. I know that you work with women, you work with men. I mean, do you hear this over and over again, this need to, at least if the emotional component is going to be a little harder to control, to make sure that the financial piece is locked down?
Well, this is where I find many couples get into the war of facts. Where here are all of the reasons and all of the evidence why we need a growth portfolio. No, here are all of the reasons why it's better to be steady. And ultimately, we're really talking about emotional preferences, that it feels right for one person to say growth is the answer, and it feels right for the other person to say, I just want to be able to feel safe.
Yeah.
Because if I don't feel safe, I'm not going to enjoy that. I'm not going to enjoy my life in the same way. And that's where we really need to have that heart-to-heart conversation with people, that it's more about understanding what's important to your spouse and your partner, or to yourself, rather than trying to say, this is the right solution, and let me tell you, all of the people who agree with me and think that your way is stupid.
I'm flashing on friends of mine, a couple. He has a therapist, she has a therapist, and then once a month they all meet together, the two of them and their two therapists, which I'm sure in the world of financial therapy where there aren't that many of you, that's not something that you do. But I'm hearing that it may not be enough to just meet with one person in a relationship. You need to deal with both components.
Definitely, if there's disagreement between partners, we need to be having those disagreements in a setting where there can be a structure to make that conversation more collaborative, more understanding. We don't want to, I will tell people, even if you win this battle, the war of the relationship will be lost as a result. So sometimes we're really pursuing wanting our way with the money because we feel like our way is the best way, we have better understanding, or sometimes the attitude is, I made the money. I get to be the one who decides how we organize it. But if you see that your spouse is checking out, not involved, being hostile, withdrawing emotionally, I mean, that's not, I don't know that I would want to spend the golden years of my life in that kind of emotional tension.
No, definitely not. There are some instances, though, where there is a lack of comfort with risk. How do you help people get comfortable with risk, life risk, money risk, risk in general?
Well, you said the word uncomfortable, which I love because that's in the realm of emotions, right? So we look and see perhaps there were experiences where that person took risks and it ended badly, and they never got to process what that meant because maybe they just turned it right around and said, the problem is taking risks. Or it could be that there are people who are really terrified of making mistakes, that their experience trying to learn and grow was a really fraught one and maybe punitive, and they had somebody who was there being overly critical. There's a lot that goes into something that is that feeling state of discomfort. So definitely we want to see what other things tend to kind of ping that. And to find a way to perhaps get more information, to see if there are some places where we can experiment, try, fail, and learn, that are not as high stakes as this needs to be the strategy for our entire portfolio. So we look for ways to work with that feeling and work with that experience so that we can get a little bit more familiar with it. And maybe it's something where it really is baggage from our emotional past, or maybe it's the thing that again is pointing us toward an area that we need to grow in order to feel more confident and to be able to assess risk for what it is.
One thing that you mentioned earlier in the interview that we really haven't talked about is this concept of avoidance. And I think a lot of people avoid the issue of longevity. They don't want to think about death. So on the flip side, they don't want to think about the fact that they could live for a very long time. Does this come up?
It does. I mean, and the fact is nobody knows,
right?
We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know which one it's going to be. And so there has to be, I think, a balance. We have to make sure that we're considering both scenarios. And then we have to just say, given what I know in this moment, here's the decision that I'm going to make that balances both of those outcomes as best as I can. And I'm going to extend some grace to myself that this is scary to make a choice when you don't have perfect knowledge and perfect foresight, and to also maybe have some ideas of things that you can do if you need to in order to kind of adjust the plan in those moments. It's always good to have a plan B.
Is there a way that you have successfully been able to get people to care more about their future selves? I mean, it's a very hard thing to do because that person, me, right? At 30 years down the road, that's a stranger. I don't know her. I don't know, what she'll be like. And getting me to put away money for her when I could go to Tahiti, right? Not the easiest decision in the world. Mm-hmm. How do you get people to invest more in this idea of their future selves?
That's where I think it helps to have self-compassion. Because a lot of times, I mean, look, it's not fun necessarily to think about the end of our lives, but it is something that we can cultivate a sense of connection to as part of that self-compassion process. Because, think about it, in this world, do we get celebrated for times when we are dependent? Where we're not able to necessarily see to our own needs, or where we have physical limitations, or where we're not able to be producers and contributors. Those are things that kind of they're relegated to a lower status socially in many ways. And so when we think about ourselves in those circumstances, there's automatically, I think, a part that just goes, oh, no. I'm just going to sort of look over here. So we want to cultivate that self-compassion for the idea that we are not gods. We are going to die someday. We will find that we lose capacities.
Yeah.
And that person deserves to be loved and cared for and taken care of by us today as part of who we are.
And that may involve the work that you do, but also the work that a financial advisor does. Do you, in therapy, and do financial therapists take a team approach? Do you work with advisors and try to bring people along through all of these dimensions of wellness?
Yes, 100%. So sometimes it's case consultation with advisory groups to just say, like, here are some common issues that come up, and how to understand maybe what your clients are experiencing, even if they're not bringing this up in an overt way. Sometimes we collaborate on cases where I get a lot of referrals from financial advisors who will say, we've talked about this, it seems like there's a plan, but at the same time I'm only getting resistance when it comes to implementing the plan. I think there's something else going on here. Or we kind of might run into complex family systems issues. And these are not things that, I mean, I can certainly advise on the relationship issues and dynamics there, but it really is helpful to have somebody on the other side with the planning expertise who kind of fills in that foundation.
For anybody who's listening and thinking, all right, maybe I should dip a toe in these waters, how long does a course of financial therapy typically last?
I usually work with people on a short-term basis. So I would say the average is about 6 weeks. Sometimes people will come check back in periodically. The idea is, as I say to my clients, this is change I want you to own and not rent from me once a week. So we set up a scope of work. We say, what is the thing that needs attention right now? And then in having that focused attention, where there's a specific goal that we're working toward, either behaviorally or there's going to be some product outcome. And then we really work on the how piece of it. So how are we relating to ourselves? How are we working through just being able to show up for the tasks that we're setting? What kind of emotional wear and tear happens? Because sometimes people can do the right actions when it comes to their financial lives, but the emotional burden, the wear and tear is disproportionate to that. And so we just want to create more ease.
I would love to leave people with a few pieces of advice. And let's be specific for those people who are at or near retirement, 10 years out or less. If they're feeling emotionally queasy about this, what would your top 3 pieces of advice for them be?
So the first thing is on the note of Rome wasn't built in a day. So when there is a big question, it really helps to set a time frame for it. So it's not like, I have to get on retirement. I have to get better at this. Let's say, how long is that going to take? 6 months? I mean, and be generous in setting that time frame, because we're really trying to work with ourselves to create the sense of, I can have a boundary here that allows me to take care of myself even as I'm doing these tasks. And I'm learning to be reliable with myself as well in doing this piece by piece. So I go in, I do the task that's assigned to me, and then I come out and I know what the task is for the next one. And we just help to break that down over a period of time so we're not feeling so rushed.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this today. If our listeners and viewers want more information about you, where do they go?
I'm easy to find. I'm at amandaclayman.com, and then you can find all of my socials. You can get in contact with me through my website.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thanks, Jean.
And for anybody who is looking for additional information about this broadcast in particular, you can always find it on our website at protectedincome.org. For specifics on this show, protectedincome.org/Clayman. Thanks so much, guys. See ya.